My name is Julian Cole. You may have seen me on the pages of Forbes, in the columns of Vanity Fair, or on stage in San Francisco, where I donated $2 million to the Equal Rights Foundation. I was what they call a successful gay American. No children, no need, no fear. My villa on the Big Sur coast faced the Pacific Ocean, and every morning started with French coffee, fresh berries, and the peace that only millions buy. I was the god of my microcosm. But death, as it turns out, doesn't go through bank accounts. It all started suddenly. That day, I was preparing for an interview for an HBO documentary about a new spiritual path for the LGBT community. At 43, I felt almost immortal, until I fell in the shower, face down. The heart? A heart attack. Lightning fast, like a shot around the corner. But the most interesting part started after. I woke up. Standing up. Naked. Not physically, no. I was standing outside of time. All I saw was a strange landscape, like a desert, but shining with a silver light, as if the moon reflected itself in it. It was absolutely quiet. No pain. No thoughts. Just an observation. It feels like someone or something is scanning my soul like an airport scanner scans my body, but deeper. Before the entity. "Are you ready?" I heard a voice say. It was neither male nor female. It was absolute. "For what?" I blurted out. "To see what you didn't want to know." And everything went dark. When the light returned, I saw a place that I couldn't describe in the usual words. It wasn't hell. There was no fire. No demons. It was an imitation of a city. It was like Los Angeles, but it was just a little different. The neon lights didn't shine, but went out. People were walking, but their faces were featureless. Most importantly, they had something on their right arm. Like a burn, but in the form of a letter. I squinted. And then I saw M. I asked the entity that accompanied me, "What is it? Who are these people?" The answer was simple and terrible. These are those who lived under the guise of freedom, but turned away from the truth. "And the letter? What does M mean?" "This is silence." I stood at the intersection of streets named not by words, but by feelings. One street of pain, another of neglect, and a third of loneliness. Everything was like a replica of the real world, but dim, extinguished. Endless Los Angeles, devoid of sun. It's like God forgot to turn on the lights. Still, there was movement in this city. People, or shadows of people, were walking along the sidewalks, looking at nothing. Soundless, silent. Their lips were stitched together by a thin thread of light. I tried to talk to them. "Hey! Who are you? Where are we?" But no one answered. They just looked past me, as if they were looking right through me. Their faces were ordinary, but empty. On the right hand of each of them is an M, as if burned out, like a mark. It glowed slightly. Not pain, but something worse, a confession. "Why aren't they talking?" I asked the entity that was with me again. "Because they were silent when they were alive," she said. "Silent about what?" "About me." I stopped. "About you? Are you?" My throat tightened. "Are you a god?" The answer was not direct, but absolute. I am the truth that they knew, but didn't recognize. The entity led me on. We entered a huge cathedral-like hall, but it didn't have an altar. Only mirrors tall, all the way up to the dome. And in every mirror I saw myself. Different versions. In one, I spoke on stage about rights. On the other, he was laughing on a yacht with his lover. In the third, he walked past a protester with a sign that said, "Where is God in your life, Julian?" I turned away. I felt sick. The entity said, "You talked about love, but you didn't talk about holiness. You demanded acceptance, but you rejected submission. You built an empire out of the truth that you rewritten. I just wanted to be myself. I exclaimed. Is that a sin? It's not a sin to be yourself. But when by yourself means against me, you become a shadow. They are shadows. I looked at these people again. Some of them were familiar to me. I've seen them in my homes, at parties. I knew their struggle, their pain. Yet here they were now, stitched together by silence. Why M? Why this particular letter? The answer was like a punch to the chest. Because silence is not just the absence of words. This is a refusal to testify. I suddenly understood. These people were not convicted for their sexual orientation. They were condemned for knowing about God, but chose to talk about everything but Him. They led others, but not to the light. They knew you? I asked. The entity nodded. Every one of them heard my voice. But he preferred silence. Now silence is all they have. I shuddered. Because I knew it too. As I walked through the city of silence, the streets grew narrower and darker by the minute, as if space were shrinking. There were no stars, no wind. Only an echoing silence, so thick that it was starting to ring in my ears. Suddenly I stopped. I felt a presence behind me. Julian! I turned around. Then he was dumbfounded. Standing in front of me was Aaron Lewis, one of my former business partners. Young, charismatic, witty, that's what he was when he was alive. He disappeared 3 years after our last deal. It was rumored that he had died of an overdose. But standing in front of me now, he looked different. His eyes were too clear, too still. You? I muttered. You did. Yes, I'm dead, he said calmly. And you've come to where we all go once. Only you're still alive, Julian. While. What is this place? Hell? Aaron looked up at the gray skies as if they might hear. No. This is the lobby. Pre-trial location. Here, the echoes of words we never said fade away. And the memory of the deeds we were silent about burns. Here everyone sees what he himself hid from God. I swallowed hard. He sounded so strange. It was like reading someone else's diary. Or executed a sentence. Why are you here, Aaron? You weren't a bad person. He smiled ruefully. I was smart. Successful. He was proud to have abandoned religion as a child. But you know, at the very last moment, in that tunnel between life and death, I realized that he was always there. And what I chose not to see. He slowly rolled up his sleeve. And I saw the same label M. Burning like a smoldering coal. I knew about Christ. My grandmother prayed for me every night. I felt God's touch even when I was sinning. But I chose to remain silent. Talk about love, energy, the universe, everything but Him. I shook my head. But you just didn't mean to offend anyone. You wanted freedom. He took a step closer. And he said in a strangled voice, as if in confession, freedom without truth is a cage painted in gold. And you and I, Julian, sold the cage to millions, calling it the palace. The silence deepened again. Why do you see me? I asked. Why are you talking to me when everyone else is silent? Because you're still alive. You have a chance. But the choice will cost you everything. What choice? Aaron didn't answer. He just pointed to the reflection in the window, my own face, but with a pale, not yet tanned, M mark on his arm. It's already forming, Julian, he said. Every time you choose to keep quiet. With that, he began to fade away, as if crumbling into ashes that had been blown away in the calm. I was left alone. In a city where no one speaks. Where silence is a sentence. I walked along the cracked pavement, each step like a bell ringing in my chest. The city was silent, but now there was an echo in it, not mine, but someone else's, like the whisper of many voices, forgotten but not gone. A strange building loomed up in front of me, massive, windowless, cathedral-like, but without crosses, without symbols. Its walls breathed as if it were alive. I could feel him calling to me. The Temple of Rejected Names. That's what the voice inside called him. I didn't know where it came from, but he knew where I was. And why you came. I went in. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not rot, not flesh. It was the smell of oblivion. It smelled like an old library where books were never read. Like a memory of someone you knew, but can't remember anymore. Hundreds of niches lined the walls, each with a masked face. Without a name. Just an expression of fear, pain, rage. Each mask whispered, barely audible, unintelligible. They whispered names that no one else remembered. "You are among those who have rejected your real name," the voice said. "Among those who chose to be anything but what God made them." I walked forward to the central altar. On it was a book of blank pages. I touched it, and my fingers started to bleed. A moment later, the page turned scarlet. And I saw. Julian Cole knew, but was silent. I understood, but I conceded. He worshipped his own reflection and called it humility. I recoiled. My chest tightened. I wanted to say that it's not true. That I was just being careful. That I didn't want to judge anyone. That I wanted to be kind. But the silence of the temple pierced me. Good without truth is a lie. Silence before a lie means acceptance of it. He who is silent chooses a side. And then I saw my name slowly disappearing from the bloody page. It was as if reality itself was beginning to erase me from my memory. I fell to my knees. I screamed. But the temple didn't hear the words, it only heard the truth. In this place, every word weighed like a sentence. And each name was a mirror of the soul. Suddenly, one of the masks moved. It fell at my feet and opened like a shell. Inside was the face of my childhood self. Someone who truly believed, prayed, and spoke to God. But his eyes were blank. I covered my face with my hands. Then I realized I'd almost forgotten who I was. When I left the Temple of the Rejected Names, the night deepened to the color of blood. Time flowed neither forward nor backward here. It stood like the air in a coffin. I felt like I was being led. Or maybe I was already led from the beginning. I found myself on a bridge. Below it is black water, without reflection. Its surface was absolutely smooth, like a mirror that doesn't have a backside. A man was standing in the middle of the bridge, a tall man in a long dark cloak, his face hidden. "You seek the truth, Julian," he said in a voice that had no age in it. "But are you ready to see the seal?" "The seal?" My voice was weak. "It is not placed on the skin, but on the outside. To choose from. On the propensity. You're already wearing it. Like millions. It is formed long before the last hour." He held out his hand. There was an M on his palm, burned, but not physically. It was like she was breathing in the air. The M tag? What does it mean? Silence. Mimicry. Modern. Mutiny. The words echoed in my heart like thunderclaps. The guardian approached. "It's not the seal of the beast. This is the seal of compromise. Those who do not explicitly renounce, but live as if the truth is an abstraction. Who does not pronounce the name of God, but uses it as a symbol of tolerance. Who avoids conflict so as not to lose comfort. Who is willing to be anything, just not to be real." I felt the letter begin to appear on my palm, too. It glowed with an invisible light, as if it had been carved from within, from the spirit itself. "Then what should I do?" I asked. "If I'm already wearing it." The guardian was silent. Then he took out the seal of the seventh gift, a glittering key made not of metal but of choice. Its shape changed as I watched. "Only through public confession," he said, "can you renounce the invisible seal. Through exposing lies, even if it turns out to be loneliness. Through the rejection of lies, even if they are clothed in tolerance and light." He held the key to my chest. I felt a hollow opening inside me, as if something else was lying there. And the key sealed it. For a moment. Or forever. "But know," he said, "that those who reject the mark are enemies not only of the world, but of the church as well." It disappeared like an exhalation. I was standing on a bridge, and now the water was moving under me. It didn't reflect lights, but faces. Those who bore the mark. I recognized them. Preachers. Artists. Leaders. Some of them were my friends. They were all silent. I realized that printing, M, is not for favorites. It is for those who do not dare to be themselves in God. I walked through a marble hall that seemed endless. The ceiling disappeared into darkness, and the floor was like a chessboard, but the pieces on it were people. Some are in white, others in shades of darkness, but not black. Every shadow and every light was deceptive. In the center is the circle of judgment, where two creatures confronted each other. One man's face was glowing, but his eyes were dead. The other was completely dark, but his voice was filled with unspeakable love. "Good and evil?" I asked. "No," said an invisible voice. "Truth and version." I wasn't brought there of my own free will. I was led forward, and a screen appeared above the circle, like a memory mirror. It shows me standing on a stage, applauding a speech about accepting everything but bigotry. I, who ignore how the truth is distorted so as not to disturb the peace. "Neutrality is the name of a demon," said the one in the half-light. "You called it wisdom, but it was cowardice." Another raised a hand in the darkness. But didn't he want peace? He did not reject God. He just didn't want to hurt her. The truth always hurts before it heals, said a voice from heaven. Jesus was a stumbling block, not a pillow. An image appeared. I turned my back on my friend when he asked me to explain why his lifestyle was contrary to the scriptures. I didn't say anything. I walked away, telling myself, "It's none of my business." One of the judges said, "So you've made it your business to keep quiet." I tried to talk. "Defend yourself." But every word I said echoed in the void. "But I was praying." I believed it until it became uncomfortable. The figure standing in the light replied, "Believed until faith asked for action." I was surrounded by shadows. They didn't attack. They were laughing. Because they were like me. Sophisticated, cultured, polite, and moderate. They were kind. And all of them are marked. Then I looked up. What should I do now? A figure from the darkness stepped closer. And for the first time I saw her face. It was mine. What you become can't enter the sky. But the person you were supposed to be can. The figure crumbled. That left me. One. Then the light fell from above, and the judge pointed upward. "Get up. The truth is not in this room. She's on Calvary, where blood does not allow compromises to breathe." I thought it wouldn't get any worse after the trial round. I was wrong. I was ushered into a narrow passageway whose walls pulsed like veins. There were no doors. Only one, the last one, is metal, with the word reply burned on it. The room was empty. But it was waiting for all my words. "We are your answers," one of them said, sitting in the corner with my mother's face. "We don't care what you felt. Just what you said." I stood there, and they came up to me one by one. Each one was alive, as if my thoughts had received bodies. Words spoken out of fear, with snake eyes. Words of pride with masks of saints. The ones I didn't say were the scariest. They looked like dead children, and each of them stared at me unblinkingly. Why didn't you say anything? One of them asked, a woman with a sign that read, your colleague who died without Christ. You knew I was going to the abyss. I didn't mean to be intrusive, I whispered. Then we died out of politeness, she said, and disappeared. The room was changing. The ceiling became a mirror. I saw myself sitting on a podcast discussing religion, and I called the gospel a personal choice, not for everyone. You sold the truth for approval, not for the money, not for power, and for the smiles. For likes. They were laughing. Their whispers grew louder, like the wind before a storm. I tried to cover my ears, but they were getting inside my head. Do you remember how you explained to yourself that the Bible is symbolic? When did it stop your friends from feeling good? And how did you laugh at the literalists, calling them dangerous? How did you pray that God wouldn't put you in a situation where you would have to choose a side? The light in the room turned purple. And then he appeared. Not Jesus. And the one who copied it. He was beautiful. Perfect. There is a deep peace in his eyes. But his breath stung. He said, you are mine. Not because he did evil. Because I never said no to evil. And he gave me the book. My name is on the cover. Inside, empty pages. You didn't want to participate in the battle. I never wrote it. No blood. Not a word. No truth. Nothing. The room darkened. The last sentence that came from the wall was not a voice, but a vibration of the soul. There are more people in hell who didn't say anything than those who cursed. I don't remember how I ended up here. The transition was like falling in a dream. You don't know when it started, but you're already flying. The ground I stepped on was scorched, as if after an ancient fire. The air is dense, as if made of glass dust. I coughed, and my mouth filled with bitterness. Not physically, but mentally. There was a hill in front of me. Calvary? Almost. Only the crosses did not stand up, but were dug into the ground upside down. Hundreds. Thousands. The crucified are not warriors, not murderers. Their faces were familiar. I recognized my university professor. He always said, religion is a personal matter. His hands were tied to a tree with ropes from his own words. He was crying, but not in pain, from the fact that he realized that he taught darkness, considering it light. On the other cross is my former business partner, Lucas. His label was tolerance. He indulged, justified, evaded. In hell, it became a loop. I heard a voice that wasn't human. This place isn't for the evil ones. This is a place for those who have refused to be kind. One of the crucified men opened his eyes. He saw me. His face was mine. I whispered, your shadow, he said. Your life, if you lived it without fear. I am you, if you were not silent. He disappeared, and I was left alone in front of the cross. There was an inscription on it. Neutral. I sank to my knees. I began to scream not from terror, but from the truth that cut through me. I realized that indifference is not a shield. It's a knife in the back of love. And then a crackling light opened in the sky, as if the sky itself were a cloth, and it was torn. The one who was the light came out. I knew his face, Jesus. But the eyes were not fire, as in the visions, and an ocean of sorrow. He came up to me. Silently. He just put his hand on my head. I expected anger. But he whispered, you finally saw it. Now go ahead and tell me. But remember, the path of truth is not in applause, but in wounds. The ground beneath me began to crack. I was falling backwards. Down. Or maybe up, back into the body. I woke up in intensive care. White light. Not heavenly fluorescent. Instead of angels, a nurse with a tortured face and in 4 with painkillers. The throbbing pain in my chest is a reminder. I'm dead. And he came back. I didn't speak in the first few days. Even when the minister from the local Baptist church came to see me, I just looked at him. There's concern in his eyes. But behind it, silence, shackled in tradition. He said a prayer. I knew he couldn't stand what I had to say. On the seventh day, at night, when the nurses had left, I picked up my notebook. The first sentence was simple. I was there. I wrote like a man possessed. 4 hours. The pages were wet with tears. I described each cross, every face, and the inscription on his neutral. I wrote that I had seen Jesus, but not in a white tunic and doves, but in the flame of a heart with eyes that would drown the universes. He didn't judge, he mourned. I tried to tell my friends. No one would listen. My colleague rolled his eyes. Do you watch too many near-death movies? He laughed, and I could hear the fear in every laugh. Fear that this might be true. When I tried to share my experience in church, the pastor said with polite horror, Julian, maybe you're overexerting yourself. It's all very subjective. We need to adhere to sound teaching. I left. Forever. And I realized that the church is no longer a home if there is no room for a voice from behind the veil. I now live on the edge of the state. I write every night. I make notes, audio diaries, and emails. Not for my own sake. I know very few people will believe me. But I have to pass it on. I am not a prophet. I was dead. And I've seen what people who call themselves good have fallen into the abyss for. The comfort of silence. For blindness under the banner of tolerance. For worshiping peace, not truth. That last night, just before I went to bed, I had a dream. It was simple. I was standing in front of a gate that looked like a living flame. Beyond them is the sky, alive and breathing. And the voice, the same one that had spoken in hell, said, You chose to speak. So you're really alive. I woke up. My heart was beating steadily. For the first time without fear. I'm alive. But I am no longer of this world.